Aisha, and I'm a former host of Mocha Single Mothers by Choice, or SMCs. Like you, as an SMC, I decided to become a mother knowing I'd be the sole care provider and parent for my children, at least at the outset. The Mocha stood for Black, so I'm using the word Black, and I'll be discussing being a single mother by choice from a Black woman's lens. You'll connect with all the interesting and fun things about this non-traditional path, like discussing which sperm to use and some hard truths about fertility and the realities of dating as a single mother who doesn't have a co-parent to rely on occasionally, and what it's actually like to parent as an SMC. This is the Black Single Mothers by Choice podcast.
Hi everyone, I'm Toja. I have two twin 6-year-old boys. We live here in Maryland. Yeah, I'm happy with them. We've been through a journey together and it's been a good ride so far.
I am Toni Jackson here in Washington, D.C. I'm a proud foster and adoptive mother. I have twin 7-year-olds, a boy and a girl, and then I currently continue to foster, and I have a 6-year-old boy.
All right, so let's dive right in. I know from being in a number of different SMC spaces that we get a surprising number of moms who are anxious about having boys, have some degree of gender disappointment or sex disappointment when they find out that they're having boys. And so we wanted to dive right in and address this right off the bat. Did you experience any type of gender anxiety when you found out that you would be parenting a boy?
I think that I was more concerned with getting through my pregnancy than I was about the actual gender. When I found out I was having twins, which was really early, about 9 weeks in, actually, I can't remember, but it was pretty early, but we didn't quite know gender yet, or the sex, I should say. I was hoping for a boy and a girl, and I was like, that would be cool. I could just knock it all out at once and not have to look back if I ever decide to have more kids, because I was going to be one and done. And then when I found out I had twins, I was like, oh, here we go.
Oh, it's like a teenager's way of being like, gotcha.
Yeah. And I had a bunch of friends like already curse me or bless me, I should say, either which way you want to look at it, then they were really clear that I was going to be a mom of boys. And so when I found out that I was having 2 boys, it took me a minute. I'm not going to lie, but I don't know that I would call it disappointment. It just took me to reorient my brain. It was more of a shock than the actual sex of the twins. And they were like, oh yeah, it's very clear. You've got 2 boys in there. I'm like, oh, okay. So,
what about you, Toni?
I will say that I am a boy's mom. And so when I got the call that I got these twin babies, I wanted twins anyway. So I was like, God heard my prayers. And then when I got the call from Child and Family Services and they told me the names of the children, I was like, okay, obviously one is a boy, but I called them back and I was like, wait a minute, are these both boys? Because I really didn't want a girl because of the sass and you know, the attitude and all of that, which I got. But yeah, I really was a little bit more, I had to adjust to, okay, one's a boy, one's a girl, but at least it's not 2 girls. I'm a provider more so than a nourisher type of mom. And so I wanted to be able to run around, kick my boys in the butt, throw them around, and we could be rough and tumble. But my little girl runs and kicks it with us as well. Really, I was just excited to get the twins part and just be a mom, period. And at least having one boy, again, I have 2 boys now. It just fulfills what I was really looking for. And then to have the girl, it does add the girly part of me when I just don't want to deal with a stinking boy.
For me, it was interesting because I actually teach about gender and sexuality. I'm a professor, and I'm a feminist. I don't mince words.
Boy.
And I was like, this is the universe telling me, okay, walk the walk now, walk the walk. And I actually now am so blessed because I actually think of my boys as like my secret weapon. Right? I'm going to train them in such a way that hopefully they're a blessing in the world and that they actually can model the kind of malehood or masculine energy that we need in the world. It's been interesting because I very quickly shifted into, this is an opportunity. Here we go. This is going to be a real challenge for me.
Okay, so let's talk about peeing and potty training.
I will say absolutely. From what I had experienced, I got my babies at 9 months. And you're right. Every time I opened that diaper, it was like you decided to pee when you felt fresh air. Where again, even with my little girl, and again, with her part being down more, if she peed, it would go down into the diaper or back. But I even have dated a guy, they still at, 50, and the wind blows. I'm gonna get hard or something.
Better that than the pee.
Right.
Yeah. So
I got really good at shielding the diaper. So whenever I pulled the diaper up, I would just pause and hold the diaper above and just catch it. Because do it once, do it twice. You're not going to get me a third time. I got really good at preempting the pee in the face. That's how I dealt with it.
So Tony and Toja, what tips or tricks might you have once you get to like potty training a toddler, right? Because I think both Hera and I are at the potty training stages, and it got real quick. But girls pee down, and they don't have a sword to have to manage as well. So do you have any tips, tricks, what was your experience potty training toddlers?
Again, having twins and one boy, one girl, I kept them all doing everything together. So I used it as an advantage to have a competition with one another. Who could go to the bathroom properly first? And I would always give like fruit snacks. To this day, they still call them boo treats. But every time every time they would go to the bathroom properly, they would get a boo treat. And so what I found though with my son is it took him a little longer. And so talking with one of my guy friends, he recommended throw a Cheerio in the toilet and have them aim at the Cheerio. And that got him, it was a game. And so that got him going more in the toilet as opposed to all around. Now, sometimes he would get it, sometimes he wouldn't, but it got to the point where it goes in the toilet, not on the rim or anything else. And so that was the best training tool that I had that worked for my son.
And what about you, Toja? Did you get any special tips on that?
Almost identical. We used the Cheerio. That helped. And I did build in some competition. One is more competitive than the other. And the one that is not competitive makes up his mind when he's going to do things anyway. So that didn't quite work for me. It just depends on the dynamic between the siblings. But with singletons, they're on their own trying to do it, I imagine. And we used fruit snacks as well for treats. I'll say that expectations for potty training, I really had to adjust it from beginning to end in terms of being able to go number 1 and number 2. It took altogether almost 2 years. They were able to pee pretty well, pretty quickly, I think in a fairly sort of reasonable amount of time, but it was much longer for them to be okay doing number 2 in the potty. They just, for some reason, had a hard time sitting on the pot and allowing themselves to go. And so I had to really patient, tried not to shame them in any way. Just had a lot of days with poop everywhere, And sometimes it was that they really did try and that they just mentally were not there and I couldn't pull them along. And so I realized that when I was putting more pressure on them, we had more accidents. And when I backed off, they tended to come along and be a little bit more open to experimenting and doing the thing and practicing. So potty training is not for the weak for both boys and girls, but I do think that for boys, it does take longer. And of course, my kids are 6 and we just got them completely night trained. So it's taken a minute. Yeah.
So I have a question. Urinals. do you have them, don't have them, let them be surprised in the public restroom? What's the deal there?
My kids didn't see a urinal until they went to actual school, and they were like pleasantly surprised. I were like, "What's that?" They were really excited, and what is that in the bathroom? That I
Spray
was
the
like,
wall?
yeah, you get to pee
I know
on
the
the
Cheerio
wall.
went out the window.
Right? But they did it together. So that was a blessing. And so now I was worried about having them to a public restroom, which we haven't really had to do because of COVID. And they're just at that age where I'm going to have them go themselves because they look like they're almost 8 years old.
That's an interesting scenario. How did you handle that, Tony? Have you gotten to the point with your kids yet where they're too old to go to the bathroom with you?
Yes. What I've done is I will take them to the bathroom and I will stand outside the public restroom because I do want my son to be a leader and reach further and be independent. And so I had him go to the bathroom, but I'd stand outside the door, have him go in, and then I would wait for him to come out and then double check, did you wash your hands? But also that way I could tell if it was too long. And then I would tell him to wait right here outside while I go into the bathroom. Do not move, do not talk with anyone. And I would go to the bathroom as fast as I could, wash my hands and get out. And so that is how I've dealt with having a boy and a girl having to go to the bathroom. I had them go to the bathroom with me until about 6. So it's really just been about a year and a half that he's been going to the bathroom on his own. And then now with the other little boy, I allow him to be the teacher for him and feel responsible to be sure you all go. You don't talk with anybody in there. You go in, you come out, and that's it. And how I manage that, even with my girl, but I stand outside the bathroom and make sure that no one's getting to them. And if there's too long a time, I open the men's door and say, come on out, going on in there, so that folks can also know I'm out here looking for my baby. And I did want to go back just one quick thing, because what Toja said with the night wedding, I was pulling my hair out on that. And there is a contraption called a pee alarm. I did everything for my boy, treats, extra tablet time. Nothing I did cutting out beverages at 5:30 and he goes to bed at 7:45. Nothing helped. And it honestly was a laziness thing. Some people don't want to admit that's what it was, but I would ask him, why are you not going to the bathroom? It's literally outside your door. And he did. And, and
want to get up.
yes, so it wasn't a physical issue, because then I was like, does he have a urinary tract infection? Is there something going on? And one of my guy friends said that his son was wet in the bed until 8 and he just was sick of it. And they got a pee alarm, clip it onto their underwear. As soon as there's some wetness on that underwear, it's almost like how the police have a little thing on their, as soon as there's wetness on that clip, the alarm will go off. And so he'll wake up and have to turn it off for it to go off. And that makes him go to the bathroom. After 2 weeks, stop wetting the bed.
Wow.
I did a bit more old school approach when I got to the point where I'm like, this is going to be ridiculous putting pull-ups on them. And they were like, I would say they were about 5.5 or so. Not even 5. I think we even make it to 5. I was like, okay, they're getting too big. I'm not spending any more on pull-ups. We're done. And I did this thing where right before I went to bed, I would wake them up and take them to the bathroom without saying no frills or anything. I just pulled them up, walked them, guided them. They did their thing and they went right back to bed. And I was really stunned the first time I did it, like, oh, they didn't actually wake up. And they're already horrible sleepers anyway. They always wake up in the middle of the night. And so I was like, you know what? This is going to be the routine. So every time, it got to the point where I was like, okay, I can't go to bed before 11:30 because that's the window that they need. And so we just got to a point where I bought some padding. You know how you get the hospital padding that you put underneath them? We tried that for about a week just to test whether they would be fine. They wake up every night at around the same time, between
awesome.
anywhere from 11:30 to 1:30 or so. Whenever they get up to come to my bed, I'm like, go to the bathroom. And they do, and then
Yeah.
they come back and they go to bed. And so
Oh.
we haven't had an accident, but that's a whole me having to carry them along. But I got that from a friend of mine, and who's also a mom of boys, who, when he was 5, that's what she did.
So I have never been the girl to go to the beauty parlor and get my hair done because I can't sit for hours.
Mhm.
With boys, how are you handling the barbershop? Are you home cutting, or what's the deal there?
I love the barbershop.
Me too. I love it too.
I love it, especially for my boys, because again, I didn't grow up getting my hair done all the time. So for my boys, it's an opportunity for them to see how other men engage and interact. And my son picked up what's up and just
I love it.
a more confident bob in the head, grasping, doing the grip from the barbershop. And he also realized this is where the men come and you be a man and you get fresh. So they have to earn the money to get their haircut. And I make them feel that it's about their self-esteem. You're going to be more handsome. You won't look raggedy. You got to look sharp, feel sharp. And so I make them also pay the barber as well as tip the barber and say you did a good job, so that they can understand the responsibility and the interaction when dealing with other men. The great thing that I do have about the barbershops that I've gone to, they've been respectful barbershops. So when the kids would come in, they would turn the music to something a little bit more friendly, or if there was a movie on, they would turn it off. So I've been fortunate to, and I would have only dealt with barbers like that, but it's an opportunity that they love. And then I have my daughter, just as I do for them, for her, I have my daughter tell them how handsome they look. Woo, you look handsome. You look so that they can know that it's an opportunity for them to put their shoulders back, lift their head up a little bit more.
That's
Very
great.
cute.
Yeah, no, we've enjoyed the barber. I started taking them when they were about almost 2 years old. And it's been really lovely. And like Tony, I've only gone to barbers that know how to handle kids and have kids around. And yeah, it's a really great chance for them to be with other men and see how men clean up. So before coming to Maryland, we were in Ohio, and we really loved that barber because he just really played around with them. He just fell in love with them and built a real relationship with them. Almost 2 years after we left, he would check in on them and just see how they're doing, because he missed them. And our second barber, this is before the pandemic, he was great too, just really sweet. I ended up dating him for a minute.
Ooh, that's gonna be my next
later.
question.
You have all your clients' moms. That was just a hot minute. And so since then, I actually used to do all of my brother's hair and my dad's hair. And so the pandemic has brought me back to that. And I'm not sure that the only reason why we would go to a barber now is because I don't feel like doing their hair anymore. And that I really do the environment and that kind of culture. It really does provide them an opportunity to connect with other men. I may not go to the same barber though. I have to find somebody else.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I know I've always thought that it was important to have as many people around your kids who love them. And I know, especially for SMCs who are raising boys, there's that additional pressure to have male role models around. And I think it's also important for girls as well. So how have you handled this issue as mothers?
I think that it is important to have positive male and female role models, right? And I'm not necessarily convinced that they need to learn how to be good men only from men. I had brothers who were raised, for the most part, by a single mom, and my father was not the best role model. And so they learned in the negative from my dad. And so having had that experience and also knowing that there were some wonderful men in my life, I haven't been too concerned about curating their world in such a way that I don't really have a lot of anxiety around it. Although I think that recently it's becoming clear that they crave that a little bit. I think part of this is the pandemic. I actually have a really dear friend who we do get to see, and he's a wonderful role model. And I do see the difference that it does make when they spend time with him, and how he interacts with them is meaningful for them. Do I go out of my way for it? Not yet. I may want to as we move forward and as we move out of this kind of pandemic lockdown. I think it would be important for me to at least put them in environments and contexts where they can interact with other men, other boys, other kinds of boys. We've been really fortunate to have a pod with positive male models in our pod in terms of other parents. And so it hasn't been as big a deal as many people thought it would. When I was starting my journey, a lot of people, that was their one thing. They were like, how are you going to, if they don't have a father, like, how are you going to do that? And I was like, I'm not sure it's going to be such a big deal. Now, I think that will evolve over time, I think.
I will say, I have not seen that in my girls. And I have a theory that I don't have a lot of, my brothers don't live close to me. My girls know that they have uncles, but I also don't have a lot of siblings who are married. And I think that there is something with the dynamic. If you have a close relation that is married and always around, even as an SMC, your energy and family dynamic might be different, but as soon as they're around, they see a traditional family structure. And I think that curiosity piques them as well.
I definitely think that males bring an additional energy to the scene. Really, any additional adult brings a certain energy to the scene, and children are just fascinated by that.
I agree with the energy. I will say, as a grown woman, I enjoy the energy and company of a man. So I'm not even going to all my kids. But I will say, even for my daughter, she looks forward to a male's company. She looks forward to, when are you going to get married? Or it might be easier if you had a husband. And then with my son, it would be fun to have a daddy, things like that. But what I've noticed, even, and this kind of was even heartbreaking. And so I remember when the pandemic first hit, and we were watching Disney. When you think of, with all things Disney, Mickey Mouse and some of the Disney, and my son said, oh, it must be great to be white, because he saw all the characters on the Disney show that were white.
Horrible back in the day.
This was during the pandemic, so this is even now. And I say that to say, just as he internalized the white part of it, he might internalize where's the male part of it in our household when he sees that there are men around in other households. And I will also say, one thing that I did notice is that men give less leniency to the boys' behavior. So one of my guy friends will say, you telling them too many times to sit down. You need to tell them to sit down and that's it. And so I did realize how men will do things where I'll coddle and allow. They're like, nope, cut it, do it, let's go. And that's it.
So I like that you brought that up, Tony. I want to pivot to a post George Floyd era, right? And so we know that America has this perception of Black boys and Black men that then lead to maltreatment of Black boys and Black men. How do you, or have you seen a difference in discipline, right? Discipline at the elementary school levels could be you're on school suspension all the way through timeouts and whatever methodology the school uses. And then as they grow up, it becomes with other authority and predominantly police, interactions with police. So how has that impacted your dynamics in this post-George Floyd era that we're in?
That's a really good question. And honestly, we're in the thick of it at the moment. I think I came to the group when I was struggling with one of my twins. So they're not the same complexion. One is darker than the other. not that much darker. He's still fair skinned, but in the family dynamic, he's darker. And I've noticed that people do treat him differently and we have a much more negative approach towards him than they initially do with my fair twin. And it's always been interesting to me to observe it. I intervene immediately, and they're not even aware that they're doing it when I do that. And this started as early as when they were in daycare at 18 months or so is when I started noticing it. And we've had 3 au pairs. 2 of those au pairs, one from South Africa, Black South African, was the worst. So we've been dealing with that. I haven't seen it so much lately in Baltimore. I have a feeling it's because we're in Baltimore. Like, it's much more diverse here generally. We haven't confronted any discipline issues, in part because I'm very lucky. My boys are very mild-mannered, very lovable, cuddly kinds of kids. And so they haven't confronted they haven't had any interactions that way. However, the George Floyd stuff did impact us quite drastically because part of their pod, they're Black in their pod. And one of their pod buddies was very callous in just saying something about the police coming after them because they're brown. And in front of me, in front of his parents, we were all together. Yeah, and apparently that wasn't the first time he had said it. And his parents were absolutely shocked. And I was also shocked. And we all had to go to different corners and talk through it. And then I circled back to those parents to have a conversation with them. Like, how are you talking about this with your child? Because clearly some steps were like, this is an opportunity for us to come correct with all of it. And then we proceeded to have several months of my child really being very focused on his complexion and being terrified. Like, what does it mean to be a brown boy in the world? And really coming to terms with that. Some of it also had to do with age appropriate distinguishing. I'm different from my brother. We're twins, but we're separate humans. And I don't look like everyone else in the household. So I had to do some real work around really explaining to him differences, how they work, really being curious about how he's interpreting the world and meeting him where he was at, rather than assuming that the damage that was being done was at this level when it really was much more at his level. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey so far, and I imagine it's going to keep evolving as we move forward.
There has been quite a few issues, especially recently, but addressing the police. 2 things. I was raised in Montgomery County, Maryland, and we always were raised to respect the police, even though my family's from the deep south of Arkansas and Blacks were horribly treated. However, we lived next door to the chief of police, who was Black. And so we respected and first and foremost were taught good people, bad people. So when George Floyd matter was finally addressed through videotape, and you can't deny it, that's when I was able to again reflect good people, bad people, and good police and bad police. And again, referencing before anything, good people, bad people, not to discount that racism exists and still exists, but I want my children and have taught them that they are beautiful children, not beautiful Black children. And so as far as my babies are fairly chocolate, I say to my son, both of them, you're beautiful, you're handsome, but I especially say to my son, look at how chocolate you are. Look at how you look like a shiny M&M. I can eat you up. So that, like Harry, you were saying, the first time I realized my color was an issue was when I was called a nigger. And I was just like, wow, and just felt it being wrong. And so with that, I want my children their self-esteem to be so strong that when that word hits them, which it will, when that word hits them, they have a internal defense of so much pride about being Black that it doesn't hurt them in the way that it has hurt in the past. And so, again, with the police and being in DC, where our chief and mayors have historically been Black, my children do have a good representation and respect the police. And funny that my son, when we're out, go up and hug the police. And the white police have even said, thank you. I needed that. And especially coming from a Black child, it let the police know we respect you for what you do. It's only the bad ones that we have an issue with.
This has been a great conversation. So as we start to wrap things up, what advice would you give to new moms who are about to embark on this journey of being a boy mom? And then what's the best thing about being a boy mom?
I would say have fun with it. You have an opportunity to raise little people, whether or not they're boys or girls. When I imagined parenthood, I thought I knew what I was going to do. I was going to do this. I was going to do it this way. I was going to do it that way. My children have shaped the parent that I have become and will continue to be. It's based on who they are as humans. And my intention is to raise well-rounded, whole, feeling, loving, compassionate humans in the world. And so when I take that as my mission, it really isn't about boy or girl. There are days that I think all children require so much energy. And one of my boys, and maybe this is another podcast episode that you can think about, is actually gender nonconforming. And he doesn't necessarily conform to how boys should be in the world all the time. He embraces it some days, and other days he's not about it. And so I think my biggest advice is to approach this process with openness, curiosity, and energy, and just be there for them and see how they move and where they lead you. And this is an opportunity to really expand who we are as mothers and be who we want to be in the world. Part of this journey about motherhood is just your identity is also being challenged and stretched. And it's a process of growth for us as much as it is raising them.
I love that.
I agree. Have fun with your children. Have fun with your boys. My focus with my boys is making sure that they're proud, productive, positive, respectful, and respectable gentlemen in society. And there's things that go along with that, manners, ethics, standards that go along with that I hold for my daughter just as highly. I put it even more stressfully on my boys. Be gentlemen, be productive members of society, and represent yourself to be respected and be respectable. And I just enjoy them doing that. And so enjoy your girls, enjoy your boys.
There you have it, Pod. You have, from SMCs themselves, raising boys. It's not that different than raising a human. And so enjoy your journey, embrace it, and embrace the growth that's going to happen in you. And thank you, Tony. Thank you, Toja. And until next time.
Well, Pod, thank you so much for taking the time to listen. If you like what you've heard, please share this podcast with your girlfriends, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about the topics covered in this episode. So email me at mochasmc@gmail.com. If you found value in the topics covered, consider making a donation using the link in the show notes below. Till next time, Pod. Bye now.